Hey, welcome to the Back Chatter Podcast. I am your host, Brian, and I will not be joined by Adam right now because you are going to get the pleasure of listening to an Adam solo pod here in a few seconds. We did this a couple of times last year. They were pretty well received, and so once again, Adam wrote and recorded something about one of his golf experiences that he just had. I actually just listened to it in this last hour, and I really enjoyed it. I think you will too. Maybe not as many jokes as a previous Adam solo pod, maybe a little more heartfelt, but I think it's great. I think you're going to like it, and I am not going to say anything else. I'm going to kick it right to episode 5 of season 3. Here you go.
Welcome to the first Adam solo pod of Bag Chatter Season 3. I suspect this is the episode that historians will identify as the one where Bag Chatter officially jumped the shark. You know, like when the Fonz literally jumped the shark, or like that episode of The Waltons where they abandon World War II Americana to deal with the poltergeist, which is haunting Elizabeth. And it's not like that Brady Bunch episode where it seems like the girl's sleepover is haunted, but it turns out that the boys are actually just rascals. It's a literal angry spirit who is wreaking havoc in the home where John Boy normally dips his quill to write of their idyllic childhood. You are here for golf stuff, and a recounting of my recent U.S. Open qualifier certainly meets the criteria far more than me talking about the episode of Little House on the Prairie where they departed from the normal schmaltzy programming to have Albert's pregnant fiancée Sylvia murdered by the clown-masked man who impregnated her against her will. He throws her off a ladder, killing her instantly. If you're unfamiliar with the episode, it's worth a Google. I suspect Michael Landon was drinking a little heavier that week, but you likely aren't here for Landon slander. Okay. Golf stuff. As I head into the competitive portion of 2025, I am putting an emphasis on remembering the gratitude I have for the game of golf. As golf author and friend of the show John Sherman recently tweeted, if you are able to play golf, a few things are going well for you in life. And there have been moments in my life where I've been caught up in comparison and perhaps even my perception of the lack of opportunity I have had in golf. Golf has been a largely solitary game for me. I didn't grow up in a family of golfers. My grandfather on my mom's side introduced me to golf, but he lived half a country away. My dad was a pastor, and most don't choose ministry because of the country club lifestyle it affords. I grew up in a bustling home filled with laughter, warmth, and hospitality. Dinner each night was treated as a reverent, grateful feast. Christmas was where common sense was abandoned in favor of creating magical memories, and where most of the golf clubs I played through high school came from. I am the oldest of 5 children, and we did life on a budget that most would look at and simply say that it was impossible. We had less than most people I know could imagine living on, and I wouldn't have traded places with a single person I knew or have known since. Into this world of bargain hunting, yard sales, and hand-me-downs to make it work, I introduced what is now a 3-decade-long passion for the rich man's game. True to form, my parents made it work. When Tiger lit my soul on fire at the 1997 Masters, my dad cut old clubs he had in our garage down to 9-year-old size. I think that they were his clubs now that I think about it, but I'm going to have to ask him about that. From there, I beat thousands upon thousands of balls in our neighbor's yard. Gary Dyalla had a yard that was maybe 40 yards long and that he let me and my sisters play in. when he saw me using my permission to play in his yard to hit golf balls across it into a small hole I had dug out with a beach shovel, he went one evening and put a coffee can into the ground. One day I was playing out there in a bathing suit and no shirt, and my dad asked if I wanted to go play golf. I got excited and I said yes. He said, well, go get ready. And I said I was ready, and he simply said, come on, bud. Come on, bud. I thought he was asking if he wanted me to play with him in the yard, but he was asking me if I wanted to go to the golf course down the street. I remember two things from that first real round of golf in my life. I remember my first tee shot with the cut down persimmons wood, the grip of which my dad had skillfully reattached with electric tape. You just hit that ball 150 yards, my dad exclaimed to me. Those guys couldn't believe it. Then I remember hitting that same driver to 4 feet on the 97-yard par 3 eighth. My dad pulled a dime out of his pocket and taught me how to mark a ball while he then played out. Till the day I die, it's the only thing I will ever think of when I see a dime. I missed the 4-footer and had the first tap-in par of my life. For the next few years, my birthday gift was the $250 junior membership that Franklin Green's golf course offered. It had been called Mojalaki for decades, then changed to Franklin Green's basically while I was there, I think because they thought it was offensive to Native Americans. Then it changed back to Mojalaki because the offense to Native Americans had subsided between 1997 and 1999. Now that golf course is called a field. At the $250 price point, it was an exorbitant gift, but I used those 9 holes for all they were worth. During the summer, my mom would drop me off and I would do laps around that 9-hole track from morning to night. There were days I played 54 holes, hiking my red Wilson bag with my 5 cut-down clubs around the course, with $5 in my pocket for a hot dog and a lemonade at the time of my choosing. In 1999, my parents used their life savings to buy the 6 acres and the 1790 home that my grandfather had expanded into a 42-room building that was a Christian youth camp in the 1980s. This is where Brian met my family. While this enormous, dilapidating at times building gave endless room for exploration, the thing that mattered to me was that my personal driving range had vastly expanded. I set a hole at one end of the yard and had 3 tees to it, which ranged from 40 to 90 yards. My dad's parents still lived at one end of the expanded building, and I once hit a hole-in-one from the 60-yard tees where my grandfather had shouted, "Nice shot! Amazing!" out the window. He had used his booming voice and deep New England accent to proclaim the hope of Christ as a missionary to Japan after serving in World War II, and now he was using it to commend my golf swing. I beamed with pride, and I will remember it for the rest of my life. Through all of this, golf played a disproportionate role in my mind. It felt intrinsic to me in ways that didn't even make sense, especially because I wasn't particularly good at it. I played through high school, breaking 100 for the first time in the New Hampshire State Championship. My family moved around through high school, landing me in Maryland, where I played for a Christian school who happened to have a Golf Digest Top 100 teacher as their head coach. While his thoughts on my swing were helpful, the most impactful thing he did in my life was giving me my first caddying job at Four Streams Country Club, where he was the head pro. This set me on a career path that would last me the vast majority of my 20s and even into my early 30s. I wound up caddying at some of the premier clubs in the country and later became a club pro because Steve Bozdosh heard me talk about golf and thought I would make a good caddy. Until 22 years old, the lowest score I had ever shot was 84. From 21 to 24 years old, I went from a 15 handicap down to a 4. During this period, golf had stealthily bled from a passion to an identity. While I had excelled far more in other sports, I had developed a sense that golf was an intrinsic part of who I was as a person. It was at this point that I created my first golf content in a shortly lived blog called The Race to 1.4. In this blog, I chronicled my quest for the loftiest goal I could think of: to get my handicap low enough to enter a US Open qualifier. When Mike from Chasing Scratch came on our podcast in season 1, I told him that when I learned of their podcast, my first reaction was jealousy that they had beaten me to an idea I felt like I had had, as if my long defunct blog meant anything in the scope of their wildly successful podcast. Life grew more complicated, and golf weirdly grew simpler. My family moved all over the place growing up. I got married. I got divorced. I had not very many friends. I lost people I love, some in ways I might have expected, others in ways I certainly did not. And through all of that, golf remained a constant where few others existed. 2 days after the funeral for my brother-in-law and one of the closest people in my life, I was at Pinehurst, playing the cradle and thistledew. Tears were shed at a moment's notice, but when life threw something at me where I had no clue how to move on, I could escape that for a moment while standing over a golf ball. I still knew what to do. And if that still worked, then the rest of my life might be salvageable. Since the start of this podcast, I have had the opportunity to embrace the competitive side of the game in a way that I have always dreamed of doing. 3 years ago, I entered my first US Open qualifier and chronicled my experience on the show. Entering a qualifier for one of the biggest tournaments in the world the last 2 years has been a strange experience for me. On one hand, I struggle with the reality that I do not enter feeling like I have a real chance to get through locals, forget actually qualify for the Open. On one hand, I feel proud knowing that I achieved something that was once the loftiest goal that seemed possible for me. I have completed the task that my old blog set out towards. On the other hand, I don't enjoy entering these knowing that my absolute best would only maybe get through. I sometimes feel like I'm entering with the goal to not embarrass myself. When the list of courses for this year's Open qualifiers in Philadelphia was released, I was a little bit disappointed. Not because there's anything wrong with the courses, but they weren't any of them were iconic courses in the area or any that I have any experience with. I scrolled down the list looking for any interesting courses that were also on the list, not thinking they had any application to me, when lo and behold, I see that one qualifier is being held at Cypress Run Golf Club in Tarpon Springs, Florida. This may not mean anything to you. It certainly would have meant nothing to me if my parents didn't happen to live off the 5th hole of Cypress Run Golf Club. Now, I know what you're thinking. Adam, do they live off the Cypress Run Golf Club in Franklin, Indiana? No. As a matter of fact, I mean the aforementioned Cypress Run Golf Club in Tarpon Springs, Florida. On top of this, it was the day after Easter. I could spend Easter weekend with my family, have my brother caddy for me, and play the qualifier on Monday. My wife and I, 2 and 1 year old in tow, took off at 3:30 p.m. for the 15-hour drive. I grew up taking road trips to Florida from New Hampshire with my family most years. My dad, a lifelong extreme night owl, would drive through the night so that the 5 of us kids could sleep, mitigating the feeling of the 25-plus hour drive for us. In Don Shorey's footsteps, we would do the same. The kids would fall asleep a few hours in, and we would get there by mid-morning. This idea felt less ideal when I was taking an hour-long nap at 4:30 a.m. in a Buc-ee's parking lot somewhere in South Carolina. Here's the thing. My family lives in Florida, and I go there for Christmas every year, and my brother and I play 4 to 5 rounds of golf a year. I have never played a quote-unquote good round of golf in Florida. Not once. I love to hit a bad drive in Florida and go, gosh, this Bermuda is so different. Every course I play in Florida has a hole that I am tempted to call the dumbest hole in America. Walt Disney laid plans for Disney World there because of the abundant, cheap land available, and some of these golf holes are designed like they are trying to fit a golf course onto the streets of Tokyo. The course I have played most down there is called Wentworth, and the second hole is a 403-yard dogleg right with an untraversable hazard running along the entire right side of the hole, 5 yards off of the fairway. A deep bunker lies right in the landing zone at the bend of the dogleg, taking driver out of your hands. Getting around the corner is impossible, even for the longest hitters, leaving you only the option of laying short of the bunker, leaving yourself a 200-yard approach into one of the most canted greens I have ever seen. There are only a couple legal pin positions on this green. Should you go over the green, it runs off a hill, leaving you a pitch back up the hill that Seve Ballesteros couldn't keep from running off the front of the green. I have supposedly solved this hole by laying up short of the green, chipping up below the hole at all costs, and gratefully two-putting for bogey. This, my friends, is the dumbest hole in America. Another course is called Landsbrook, and they have a golfing alligator as their logo, and that is so fun. But what is less fun is the 440-yard par 4 fifth, out of bounds right, a hazard left. And I did check this on Google Earth, a landing zone that is less than 30 yards wide. Lou Stagner would tell you that this is a statistically impossible hole and that nobody has ever made par on it. And my anecdotal evidence would render him not just a nerdy golf curmudgeon. It's the dumbest hole in America, folks. Point being, Florida golf and I do not get along. I have touched more alligators there than I have shot rounds in the 70s, and that is unfortunately not a fake statistic. I chose this qualifier because it would give me an experience I would probably never have the opportunity to have again. My family would be part of my golfing life. My brother would caddy for me, and some of my family might even walk along. When we got to Florida, I promptly began a cycle of debating whether or not to withdraw. The primary reason for this was because I was playing like a steaming pile of garbage. I hesitate to say that because I don't want to offend steam or piles or garbage. I arrived in the Sunshine State and promptly shot a 92 in a casual round, the first time I had not broken 90 since 2014. My brain went into a blender, and I went for my practice round at Cypress Run. I checked in, and the pro kindly informed me that a USGA official had told him that this was perhaps the most competitive local qualifier in the country. This caused me to take a peek at the field, and oh my. Florida is a different animal when it comes to competitive golf because so many pros live down there. First, I Googled one of my playing partners. Immediately, a PGA Tour profile appeared, revealing him to be the 967th ranked player in the world. I'm pretty sure I'm not in the 967 best golfers named Adam, so this was alarming. I looked up my other playing partner and found him on social media, and he'd had an interesting time recently because he had been Victor Hovland's caddy at the Masters the previous week. I started looking up names at random, and without fail, a PGA Tour profile would appear. The ones I did not look up were the ones I didn't need to, namely Chase Koepka and 17-year-old phenom Blades Brown. The practice round went better than the 92, but not markedly. While the score was better basically by default, I was lost. I felt like every swing was trying something new in an effort to find something, and I threw in a couple straight hosel shanks for good measure. I went back to Wentworth that evening and walked 9 holes and found enough to shoot 1 over for the 9. We were 36 hours from a U.S. Open qualifier, and a 37 at Wentworth felt like progress. Yikes. I woke up the day before the qualifier and headed to Cypress Run to use their incredible practice facility. I got there around 9 a.m. and found Blades Brown putting on the practice green ahead of his practice round. He headed to the first hole, which runs along the right side of the driving range, as I plopped my bag down on the tee. I grabbed my pitching wedge, like I have done for every range session for years. I loosened up a little bit, I stretched, I took a free-flowing swing just to get the body loose, and stone shanked it into the first hole. I laughed and pulled another ball over, only to hosel rocket that ball into the first fairway once again. A cold chill set over my body, and I started making absurd adjustments. Just how low can you hold your hands to get the hosel out of the way? Can you set all of your weight in your heels and still hit a golf ball? No matter what I did, I would clip the hosel and send it 45 degrees to the right, only interrupted by the occasional embarrassing pull hook as I flipped the face through impact. Blades Brown and his posse teed off the first and literally knocked a couple of my shanks back into the driving range as I continued to struggle to hit an open field. It was in that moment that I decided I was going to withdraw from this tournament. Even Brian Elaine could do better than this, I said to myself. I propped my phone on my bag and videoed more shanks and told Brian I was withdrawing. He responded immediately with a video that started with the words, "Well, first of all, your posture is garbage." I had gone so far in trying to combat the shanks that I had contorted my body into a slumped Quasimodo position. He told me to stand up and raise my hands, and I flushed the ball for 20 minutes. I walked back to the house and tentatively decided not to withdraw, but gave myself every out in the world. If I had the shanks on the range, I withdraw. If I hit 3 shanks during the round, I withdraw. If the salad is on top, I send it back. It's hard to go to sleep early in my family's home. Conversation flows effortlessly late into the night, and it's 3 a.m. before you know what happened. But I forced myself to go lay down at around midnight before my 8:20 tea time. I fell asleep right away, but woke up at about 2:30 and could not fall back asleep. I was anxious. Anxious to get going, anxious about the shanks. In an early episode of this podcast, I told the story of when my dad caddied for me at the 2014 U.S. Mid-Am qualifier that was undoubtedly the low point of my golf life. I put a lot of pressure on myself to play well in front of my dad, and instead got the worst case of the shanks of my entire life en route to an embarrassing round that included an 11 on the 16th hole. Now, 11 years later, with my mom, sister, and wife prepared to walk along with me, I was feeling similar pressure. and I was afraid of the shanks. Was history bound to repeat itself? I gave up on sleep around 5 a.m. and I sipped coffee on my parents' wraparound deck. When it was finally time to go, the 5 of us loaded into the car for the 2-minute drive to the clubhouse, and my sister spontaneously played Aragorn's speech at the gates of Mordor from Return of the King. I see in your eyes the fear that would take the heart of me. A day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day. This day we fight. And fight I did. If you are waiting for a dramatic scorecard reading or a hole-by-hole breakdown, you have, for once, come to the wrong place. I did not qualify for the U.S. Open. I shot 43, 43, 86. I beat a few people and lost to a whole bunch more. I had one shank on the 16th hole, and I did not withdraw. I am not proud of shooting 86 in a U.S. Open qualifier, and I shouldn't be. But for once, I could honestly say that the day had very little to do with what I happened to shoot. When golf has been the solitary endeavor that it has so often been for me, I often felt left with no option but to tie my opinion of something's worth based on how I played that day. Shoot a good score, then the work I have put into the game for the last 27 years has been spent wisely and well. Shoot a bad score, and I've been tempted to say that I have wasted countless time, money, and energy. But at the end of this round, I was frustrated, though I didn't feel like I had embarrassed myself. I wouldn't be getting a letter from the USGA or anything like that. More importantly, I had spent the day locked in with my brother. We had been a team, and when I hugged him at the end of the round, it felt like I had truly fought and grinded with my brother by my side. We had been through something together. Some of the most important women in my life had gotten to see me doing something that has been identity shaping for me on the biggest stage that I can play on. I had, for once, gotten to play the game I love with the people I love, and the gratitude I felt for that surpassed any feelings I had about my score. Even from a golf perspective, my takeaway stems from something my mom said to me later that evening. She said to me that the biggest thing she felt from the day was that she had watched me play with some of the best golfers in the world, and that I fit in. Don't get me wrong, I am not fully delusional. My playing partners beat me by 10 and 13 shots, respectively. I am very aware of the ways that I decidedly did not fit in. And on a different day, that would have consumed me. But that is not this day. This day, I got to take a step back and view things through my mom's eyes. Not obsessed with greens and regulation and scrambling statistics, but seeing her son with professional golfers and saying, he looks the part. What more could a son want? As I said before, there have been many times where I arrogantly, perhaps, looked at the golf opportunities of some around me and said, what could I have been if I had been given that? If I'd grown up at a country club or had more people to play with, or if I had taken lessons earlier in life. But as with most such thoughts, it shows only a lack of gratitude for the incredible opportunities I have been given and the string of people at every step of my life who have pushed me forward in the game I love in ways that I never could have done by myself. Whether it was my dad sawing down his own golf clubs for me, or my grandfather showing me his passion for the game, or Gary Dyalla burying a coffee can in his yard for me. In recent years, I have had dear, dear friends, Brian and others, who have propelled me to opportunities I simply would not have had otherwise. People who have helped me with equipment needs, entered me in tournaments I couldn't have afforded on my own, and otherwise taken an interest in my golf goals and, to a much larger extent, my life. People who have made me feel seen and supported me in the moments when I felt crazy in my pursuit of this stupid but beautiful game. Some of these people I have met as a direct result of this podcast. I love you all. I couldn't have missed the cut by 16 shots in a U.S. Open qualifier without you. I am grateful for the game of golf. I am grateful that there is a single person who would listen to this wild and rambling monologue. And I am grateful that next week there will be another episode of Bag Chatter.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We are so grateful for all of you. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at BagchatterGolf or Brian Elaine Golf. If you've got a question you want answered in a future mailbag episode, or if you're a brand looking to partner with us, send us an email at bagchattergolf@gmail.com. Music credits can be found in the show notes, and of course, we'd love for you to give this podcast a positive review and rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. Last but not least, don't leave yourself too much bone meat on putts, and as always, get out there and make those ham. We'll catch you next time.
So strong.